Hello and welcome to Doug's Front Porch, a podcast where I get to sit down with friends, old and new, and have honest conversations. Today, I welcome to the front porch Monica Stout, a dear old friend that I've known for, I don't know, how long, how many years have we known each other,
Oh my
Monica?
god, I can't even count that high.
Yeah, right. How about it? Um, but it's been a wonderful friendship, and we've had great conversations over the years, and I really would like to pick your brain on a couple things that I don't think we've ever really talked about. So I'm gonna fire away right away.
Okay.
Here's my first question for you. So tell everyone where you were born and raised, real quick.
Okay, sure. So, I was born in Holland, Michigan. I lived in Michigan till I was about 7, and then we moved from Michigan down to Dublin, Georgia, which was a huge change, um, culturally, even just understanding language at age 7 in the Deep South. I had a really hard time picking that up at first,
I
and then
believe it.
we lived there for a few years. We moved to Ohio, in a little town called Jackson, lived there for a few years, and then we moved to Pennsylvania, which is where I met Doug.
Right. And that was what grade were you in, or when were we in when you moved to Pennsylvania?
Middle school. So it was like end of 6th grade. Like I came right at the beginning of 7th grade.
So I never moved as a kid, and so what was that like? I understand like the culture shock you talked already about. I mean, that would be going from the Upper Midwest to
Right.
Deep
Right.
South. But what was as a kid? Do you feel that you were able to adapt quickly, or was it a challenge?
I mean, I think every move was a little bit different. Some were easier than others. Pennsylvania was probably the most difficult as
Ooh, really? Why do you say that?
just because I think the age that we moved, it being middle school, that's just an awkward, difficult time for kids in general. And I had a really hard time. I had some really good friends in Ohio that I left, and I think I was missing them. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't really have that support when I first moved to Pennsylvania. And I think it was almost like going backward a little bit at that time because I had come from a school where we changed classes, you interacted with everybody in your whole grade. And then I think our 7th grade class, we were stuck with the same class the entire day.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I just didn't meet a lot of people. And it was hard. It was hard. It was a really hard time.
Yeah, middle school is hard regardless. But then to be thrown into a brand new building, brand new people. I mean, you literally knew nobody
Right.
when you
Right.
came to our school.
Not
Yeah,
a
I can't
clue.
I can't imagine what that must have been like.
It was it was difficult. I mean, because you're coming into contact with kids who've known each other their whole lives, and suddenly you're the new kid. And I mean, I was extremely awkward. I was very nerdy. Um, you know this about me.
Yeah,
And
well, we all
so
yes.
it was doubly hard being an awkward, kind of shy, at least in school. I was never shy at home. I was always
Uh-huh.
very shy at school though. And I had some encounters with bullying at that age too that were really, really hard, um, and terrible. But anyway, it was a hard time. You know, my mom got sick right around then too. She had breast cancer. Um,
Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
looking back on it now, and I can't imagine. So yeah, we've already mentioned, new school, new people, and then on top of it, you've faced bullying, and then your mom had cancer. I really don't know how you did it. Looking back on it now, I mean, I've gone through a lot of that stuff, but never all at the same time.
I call it my
So
character building years. You know, I
yeah,
built a
no,
lot of
absolutely.
character over those years. You know,
Well, you just tossed me a slow pitch softball here. I'm going to ask you this question then. How do you think those events changed you in the sense that of the person that you are today?
well, I think going through things always builds up your empathy toward others. So I think in addition to empathy, also like being able to enter a situation and not feel uncomfortable. Like even growing up, getting older, going to college and starting jobs, like I've never really felt like I couldn't talk to people. So I think a lot of that built up my communication skills, just as a person, and then also just understanding how that can feel to people who've never gone through it before, of
Mm.
having to enter a room and not know a single person in there. So I think from an empathy standpoint, it really built that up.
Yeah, it makes sense, makes complete sense. And I've always known you to be that person that is so outgoing in that sense, and no matter what the situation is, you have always shown empathy. You can't say that about everybody
Right,
at the end
right.
of the day.
Right, well, it's something, you have to experience, I think, sometimes the bad things in life,
Oh
the
yeah,
hard things in life, so that you can see other perspectives, and I think also being a kid who grew up moving around a lot and even moved around a lot once I was an adult, it just helps broaden your spectrum and your view and your perspective so you can kind
sure.
of see things from other angles that maybe if you grew up in the same place your whole life you kind of have a narrower view. Sometimes it's not really your fault,
Right, right.
but it's just the environment that you grew up in.
Sure. Well, let's fast forward a little bit. So we graduate high school, and we all scattered to the four winds of the earth,
Sure did.
and you went back home to Michigan, back to
I did.
your original home state, and you attended Central Michigan
Yes.
State University, correct? What's the mascot there?
The Chippewas.
The Chippewas. Okay. So what did you study at college?
So when I first started college, I thought I wanted to go into education. So I actually went to Central
I never
because
knew
it was
that.
yeah, yeah. It was a big education school. I wanted to do elementary ed, and that was why I selected that school,
Uh
because it's
huh.
pretty well known in the state, good program. But once I got there, I had already changed my mind. So I actually took a whole bunch of broadcasting classes and then sort of figured out that wasn't really what I wanted to do. I didn't really like the program that much, and I sort of slid into business and marketing. Um, and I also took a bunch of writing classes. I almost had enough to have like a minor in creative writing.
What was it about the marketing classes? We're going to come back to this later, but what was it about the marketing classes that you liked?
I just had some really great professors.
Uh huh.
One in particular that sticks out in my mind who I think changed the course of my college career without maybe even knowing it. He was just such a great professor. He was really hard, tough professor, but also like one of those professors who's big on life lessons and kind of like helping steer you a little bit too. So
Yes.
yeah, I
Yes.
think that's he's probably one of the big reasons that I stuck with marketing, and he's also one of the reasons I graduated because I had something happen. I had a good friend pass away toward
Uh
the end
huh.
of college, and when you're going through all those emotions and you're still really young, I wanted to quit school. I was ready to,
Sure.
give up at one point, and he kind of was a little bit of a counselor, was a really great professor of mine at the time. I had a capstone class with him that I needed to graduate. And, I remember sitting in his office. It felt a little bit like Tuesdays with Maury. If you've ever read those,
Yeah. Right.
we had some of those conversations, and he was just a great professor, great guy,
Yeah.
great professor, great human being.
It's kind of funny or ironic in the episode that was came before this one with Dustin. He had a similar story. He didn't go to school to become as a music major, but it was one professor
Yeah.
who just like found him, I guess. And Dustin shared a great story about how that totally changed everything. Totally changed everything. Um, it's interesting. I I think about I had two professors in college that I would say did those things for me too. But that's maybe a conversation for another day. All
Sure.
right, you graduate. I'm gonna fast forward now a little bit. This is a story I want to dig into a little bit.
Okay.
So, for those of you that don't know Monica, Monica is a huge fan of the band Guster, which maybe not the most popular band. It's one of those bands that either people know it and absolutely love them, or they don't know them at all.
Or they say,
Um,
what's a gut?
yeah, no, right, right, right. So this is the one of the cool stories that I think Monica has to share is that tell everybody about your wedding.
Sure, sure. So my wedding. So um Derek and I had my now husband. We had been talking about getting married. We had just moved back to Michigan after living in DC for quite a while, and we came back to Michigan. I sort of uprooted him from the DC area because my parents had not been doing so great health wise. And we were living in their house. And I kind of realized like we had moved out at this point. We were living in downtown Grand Rapids, but I had just realized like having a big to do wedding just was too much at that point in our lives. So I had to kind of think, well, what do I want to do? What is us? And I reached out to the drummer in the band Guster, who I've, gotten to know a little bit over the years because I've gone to so many shows. Um,
Uh-huh.
and they're my favorite band. I've been listening to them since I was 18. So anyway, I reached out to him, and I think his response back to me was, "Is Derek worthy? Are you sure you
Oh.
wanna do this? Marriage is a big step." And it was just really, really funny. And I told him kind of off the bat, like, listen, like, I think I want to do something at your show in Grand Rapids. I'm not sure what I want it to look like yet. I don't want to be on stage. That's not really my style, but I think, I can figure something out. And so he said okay to the whole deal, and we got my brother and sister-in-law to come and a few friends. I had a friend who married us at the show, and what we had kind of decided on was we would get married during a song that they sang. So we picked two or three songs and just decided whichever one of those they played first would be the song that we got married during.
So you didn't let them know that you didn't say like, "Would you guys please play this song?" It
No,
was like, "Oh, geez,
no. So
okay."
it was really left up to risk. And I would say like we went about halfway through the show, and I looked at Derek a couple times like, what if they don't sing any of the
Yeah,
songs?
right, right.
So I mean, luckily they did. They ended up playing Satellite. That was the one of our choices.
Okay, so as soon as that song started, of course, you know their music so well. I mean, by
Yeah.
the intro, you were like, "Oh my god, here it is." Is
Yep.
that literally it's like and you're like, "Okay, everybody, it's showtime."
Yes, yeah. I mean, it was really nerve-wracking. I mean, one is it was funny because here we are at this show and I'm in a white dress. And I mean, people are kind of looking at us like, what? And
Yeah, right.
Derek had on a tuxedo shirt. And this was kind of as Twitter was taking off and people were just sort of learning about hashtags.
Uh-huh.
And it they didn't really get it. So we had a hashtag on the back of Derek's shirt that said hashtag Guster Wedding because we're like, oh, the crowd will be our photographers. They can take
Right,
pictures of our
right.
big moment. But people didn't really get it. So we got a few pictures, but not a ton. So that's my one kind of regret of doing it that way. We didn't get a lot of photos. We do have, a nice video that's out there on YouTube of the whole ordeal. I was really, really nervous.
Sure.
My friend married it was hard to hear her because it was very loud. We were in the second row of the show, and like people midway through realized what was going on. And while it was happening, I remember thinking like, okay, does anybody even know we're doing this? And then at the end when we kissed and everybody started cheering, I was like, oh my god, everybody's watching us. They know what's going on.
I think that is such an awesome story. I have to be honest, when I found out about all this, I felt a little angry that I wasn't able to be part of it, but at the same time, then I was like, "Oh, come on, it's not your wedding, Doug." So, but I think it's such a great story, and I have shared that story with friends of mine, or anytime I ever hear someone ever mentions the band Guster, I always say, "Did you know my friend got married at one of their
It's so
shows?"
funny. I know, and I
I
was the first. I mean, that was one of the things the band told me too, like, so we got to hang out with them a little bit after the show, and they're
Oh,
like,
that's cool.
"Listen, you're the first people who have ever done this. If anybody else tries to do it, like, they're second. Like, you guys that was really creative." And the lead singer, he kinda talked about what had happened right after it happened on stage, and talked about the letter that I had sent them because I sent this
Uh-huh.
one letter that just talked about why I wanted to do it, and it was kind of like their music had been the fabric of my life. Like I, good times, bad times, relationships, ups and downs. Like it was just the one constant, and so it made sense to me to get married where there was a constant, especially when we were going through all this stuff with my parents and just a lot of uncertainty. It just felt like the right move. And it's funny because I was thinking about this with all of the people who are having to postpone weddings and things right now because of COVID.
Right, right.
And I was like, you find your thing that works for you. And it might mean you have to go to the justice of the peace, but you're going to find something the day that you get married that is special to you, that is unique to you. And the outside world, COVID-19, like there's nothing that can happen there that's going to ruin that for you. Um, I think you just have to search for it a little bit and you'll find
Sure. Yeah, I agree. That's such a great story. I love hearing it. I love hearing it from your perspective too in that sense. I don't think I've ever heard it the whole thing. So I thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate it.
Sure, sure.
So now let's jump to your professional Monica Stout.
Sure.
Um so tell me about your the job that you have, and I have to be honest, I out of all of my friends, I think you're the only friend I have that I can't really explain to anybody what you do.
Well, if I told you,
Which I mean, that's a
I'd
that's a
have to.
totally crazy story. I know it sounds really weird. I mean, I have some friends that do stuff that is I'm not allowed to tell people what they do because they can't tell me what they do. But that's different. Like you're not
Right.
doing anything like top secret for the gov. Well, I don't think
Not
so anyway.
anymore.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
Okay, so I cheated and I looked at your LinkedIn profile, and you have listed that you are a marketing and communication specialist. Is that right? Is that what I wrote down?
Strategist, maybe?
Strategist,
Yeah.
okay. Well, what is that? Okay, I don't know what that means. What's that mean?
Well, I mean, my career has been really, really varied, and I think that's part of what's made me land where I am now, because of all those different experiences. I tried a few things, I think at one point I had my license to sell insurance, in the state of Michigan. I did not like that. Do not recommend. Insurance is not for me. And that, really motivated me to look for something different. So I got into government contracting and consulting, after I was doing the insurance gig. And it's what I moved out to DC for. So I took a job as a consultant at NASA, and I worked at NASA headquarters, with the team that was putting together the requirements to put together the vehicle that's replacing the shuttle, the crew exploration vehicle. So I was with this team that's putting out this big procurement, and I was under like cipher locked doors, and I mean I had a higher clearance then, so we were laughing like you're not doing anything secret. Well, I was working on a very very top dollar procurement with these folks, at that time. So it was a really cool project, and I got to not only be in DC, but I moved down to Houston with them, for a few months, and worked at Johnson Space Center, which was really cool. But I ended up leaving there and going over to the Department of Veterans Affairs. So I've worked in the IT part of VA for, I don't know, almost a decade, maybe even more. I've come and gone a few times, done a marketing thing with a private company for a little bit, but for the most part, what I do, and I was even thinking about this, I was like, is Doug going to ask me to explain what I do? Um, sure enough, what I really do, so I'm in the IT part of VA, and VA has a lot of different audiences paying attention to what they're doing. You've got Congress who wants to know like how are we spending the money that's appropriated. You've got veterans who want to know like what are you doing with programs and benefits for us. And you've got the like internal employees. So VA has a staff of like 400,000 people. It's a really big place. There are a lot of different things going on. So, kind of my role where I am in IT, I'm on a communications team, a strategic communications team, is really like telling a lot of the VA stories. So what's happening out in the field, like what new applications are being developed that are going to help veterans, get their benefits faster, or, you know, what cool things are coming out that are going to impact their lives, or how are we spending this money that has been given to us to help veterans. So it's a lot of like, when I was thinking about it, I was like, well, really, there's an element of storytelling. Like, obviously, it's always very based in the truth, period. But it's helping kind of translate a lot of the technical mumbo jumbo that people speak into like terms that your grandmother, your grandfather can understand, who may not be like technical people and
And
don't.
where do you tell those stories? Is it social media? Is it in press releases?
Both. So it's a little bit of everything. So internally in VA, we have blogs and we have, different websites and things that we're updating that kind of stuff in. Then there's also like testimony to Congress that we would help write. There's also external press releases, just like you said. So it's a little bit of everything. So it's what I've had to do is really sort of become a jack of all trades for different types of media. So when I say
Which
strategist, it's kind of like seeing the big picture and working a lot of these themes and VA strategy into these pieces that we're putting out.
so of the medias that you work with, which one is your favorite?
I actually really like internal communications, like so staff communications, like kind of the little bit of HR flair. That's one area that I think is probably I feel the most comfortable doing a lot of the internal com.
And which of the medias do you hate the most?
I mean, I don't hate any of them. I Otherwise I wouldn't enjoy my job, but
Right, true.
I would say probably like the one I have a harder time with sometimes is some of the external media, so some of the press types of things.
Okay.
That's a little bit, there's an element there that, it's not always a guarantee that a story is going to be picked up, um, and things like that. But no, I like everything that I do, or I wouldn't do it.
Right. That's awesome. What makes your job difficult?
Well, I mean, right now, COVID-19 makes my job difficult, because we're doing a lot of communication about that. Being in the IT part of VA, we're responsible for all these underlying systems that are allowing that giant workforce to now telework and are allowing, veterans to have telehealth appointments and things like that. So there's been a huge uptick in the amount of communications that myself and my team puts out. So that's been a little stressful.
Mhm.
And that's one of the things too. It's just like a crisis like this. You couldn't expect this to come. Um, so it can make things a little bit difficult.
How so I think most Americans know what the VA is. I think many Americans, especially if you don't have any connection to it, really have no idea what the VA does. And I'm only learning more and more about that just through friends of mine who utilize the VA. I mean, prior to that, I had no idea half the stuff that the VA does. And it's also like you said, it's a buzzword whenever Congress is talking about budgets and the money. Um,
Mhm.
if Tell our audience at least maybe one or two things that most Americans don't realize about the VA that they should.
So one that's really timely right now is VA's fourth mission, which I didn't even find out about until the COVID-19 stuff started. But VA basically has the ability to open up all of their medical centers to the public, so not just to veterans during a time of crisis. And that's what they call their fourth mission. So I thought that was really cool. I mean, I was like, wow, and
So have
yeah,
VA hospitals moved
yes.
to do that? Okay.
Yes, they have. There's quite a few and few beds that they've opened up in New York since New York was such a hot spot. I
Hmm.
know that was one of the first spots, and I think there are like a few others too. I know they've been looking at all of the hotspot areas, and there's a lot of great things that they're doing. I think sometimes VA isn't always the greatest at telling their good news, um, like this, like the cool things that they are doing to not just help veterans but help America.
That's awesome. That is awesome. Okay, enough talking shop.
Okay.
Um, I mean, it was interesting. It's interesting. I don't want to make it sound like that wasn't his because it was. I've always wondered. But the one thing I have one last thing about your job. I also noticed when I was on your LinkedIn profile, you have this quote, and then I want to ask you about this quote. Nothing makes me more excited than executing a really great campaign. Why?
So a communications campaign, I think that's the quote you're grabbing. Um, so part of that is, and that's the strategy piece of what I do. So when you're in those beginning stages of planning out a communication strategy, and putting together your plan and all the different modes of communication you want to use, like I just really like doing that. I don't know, it's a very nerdy thing, I guess, but
No.
um,
Do you, Do you prefer the team setting, or do you prefer, because you work at home, so you
Right,
are an individual,
right.
and a lot of times I would imagine you're working on individual stuff. What do you prefer more, that individual time or team time?
I like a good mix of both. So I've gotten very used to being a teleworker, so everybody moving to this now is kind of funny to me because 'cause I've been doing it for years,
Right,
and I'm used to it, and so the fascination with Zoom meeting right now is really hilarious to me because anybody who's teleworked for any amount of time, they're always like, "We don't want the video, don't turn the video on. No." We don't want the video. I'm in my pajamas. No, no. So, that's funny to me, but I do enjoy, like I feel like I get a lot accomplished when it's just me, but I
mhm,
also like that team time. So
sure.
whether it's through, phone calls or it is through those Zoom meetings or even some of the communications tools that are out there like Slack and Microsoft Teams. All that stuff I think helps you work as a team a lot better. It helps facilitate a lot of those communications. So for me, it's a mix of both. Like I couldn't, I couldn't work every day and have it just be me and just be putting out products. That wouldn't be fun to me. I think
Right.
you definitely need the interaction with other people for sure. So like having a team.
Alright. How do you blow off steam? What's your go-to, you had a stressful day, you just need to detox. What's your go-to thing? Dustin last episode, which for him was is running. He
Yeah.
he he loves to long distance run. What is it for you, Monica?
I really like a lot of mindless, like, television, like, really dumb reality TV. So
Seriously,
yeah, like, I'm gonna admit something here. I like to watch Teen Mom. I really like that show.
is it because it just gives you an opportunity to not think about anything
Yes.
heavy? Is
Yeah,
okay,
yeah. So I need, like, something that just requires no brain cells. And it's entertaining. I mean, it is very entertaining. So some shows like that, and various like Netflix shows. And then I've always liked to listen to music, obviously,
uh-huh.
on some Guster, things like that. But yeah, I'm not running like Dustin. I probably should be.
No, well, I told him, he's yeah, when you listen to the episode, Monica here, but I was definitely not, in the same camp as, "Hey, let's all go for a run." Uh,
Come on, bro.
I never have been, never will be.
Maybe have a good beer.
Yeah, no, that's that yeah,
Yeah,
I would prefer to do that over running any day.
yeah.
Um, so your job is about messaging, but what is your message personally to the world, the bigger world, and what do you hope to pass on to your son?
Oh my gosh, that's a lot of things at once, though.
I know, I'm throwing it at you.
I mean, bigger message, so it's really hard, I think, right now because we're all caught in this 24-hour news cycle of watching these very heavy things, and it can make us really anxious. And I feel like my message right now for people, especially people who have kids, is that they're watching. They're watching how we react, they're watching what we do, and it's shaping them whether or not we realize it. So I feel like you got to kind of keep yourself grounded through all of this chaos for your kids. So that they can attack the world and not approach it from a standpoint of fear. Um and I know that's something like I am trying really hard to like have some sense of normalcy in our house right now, be it through
It's hard. It's
That's
it's
hard.
really hard.
It's hard because suddenly, like, a lot of us are working full time, teaching our kids full time because schools are closed, and a lot of jobs at once, and there's just not a lot of downtime for us, so I think it's easy to get stressed out, and I think we just kinda have to keep ourselves grounded and be mindful of the little ones who are watching.
Right. That's great. Whew, it's a lot to think about. It really is.
It is.
Because you are constantly on display.
Yeah.
Um, as a parent, you are, and with as a teacher, since I teach, I mean, that's my job. I am on display, and I have to think about that. Like, it's not just what I say to kids; it's how I say it to kids. It's not just how I look at a kid. It's what is that message that my eyes or my facial expression might be portraying
Right.
that I maybe don't even realize I'm doing, because they will pick up on it. And you can build relationships that way, but you can also destroy relationships that way
Right, and I
without
mean,
even knowing it.
we're in a scary time, and we don't know
Wh-
when all this stuff we keep talking about when are we gonna get back to normal, in air
Yeah,
quotes, and we just don't know, and I know even I'm sure your kids have asked you too, like, "When can I go play with my friends?"
right.
And we just don't have the answers. I think it's hard to be a parent and not have the answers, but have
No,
to come
yeah,
up with
yeah,
something. You have to say
right,
something that gives them some level of reassurance because you don't want a bunch of scared kids out there.
right, right. Yeah, I agree. I agree. Okay, moving to the last part of our episode. I'm closing all of my episodes with 10 random questions that I don't want you to really they're not deep thinking questions. They're
Okay.
kind of like in the vein of Inside the Actor's Studio at the end
Okay.
there with James Lipton,
All right. All
but
right.
not the same questions. But all right, just answer them right away. Here we go.
Okay.
Number 1. What is your morning drink of choice?
Coffee,
How do you take your coffee?
creamer, usually whatever creamer I have in the house, but my favorite are those like sweet creamers.
Okay, okay. Um, so I was this I'm gonna well, okay. So the next question was, what is your go-to musical artist or group? But we know, but we you already addressed that. So
Right.
I'm gonna ask this question:
Okay.
what is a song by anybody that always makes you cry?
Oh, like Coldplay, The Scientist.
Oh, that's a that's a great song. That always brings tears to your eyes.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good song. That's a really good song. All right, question number 3. What movie can you watch over and over again and never get old of it?
Oh my god, there's so many.
Pick one.
Um, oh my gosh. I can't even think of there are, like, so many that and a lot of them are kids movies now. I actually
Okay.
don't mind Trolls. I've seen Trolls a billion times. I actually don't mind it.
I have to admit, that movie has been shown in my house probably close to a billion times too, but I never actually sat and watched it.
What?
However, no, right, well, yeah, I know. However, the soundtrack is great.
Yeah.
The
It
music to that movie.
yeah, it gets stuck in your head for sure.
Yeah, it does, totally. All right, Trolls, that's good. Number 4. What is the last thing you read?
The last thing I read I started a book that I didn't finish. It was
Okay.
a Wally Lamb book, and I think I read a chapter on a plane, and I don't even remember what it was.
Fair enough, fair enough. Okay, next. 5. What is your favorite pizza topping?
Uh, Pepperoni.
Okay. 6. Laying on the beach or going for a hike?
Beach.
Okay. 7. You invite me over for dinner. What are you cooking?
Probably a casserole.
Okay. Okay. Like tater tot casserole or like
No, no, I would probably make my grandmother's, Johnny Mazzetti. That's what I
So
would
this is I have learned that growing up where I did, casseroles weren't necessarily a really big thing, but in the Midwest that's like religion,
Oh my
right? This like
yeah!
hot dish or whatever they call it or
Oh, yeah, you gotta know your casserole.
Okay, well, I'm gonna have to come to Michigan, and you're gonna have to give me a
I mean,
tutorial on
it's how I hooked Derek. I think that was the first meal I ever made him, and he was like, "Oh, girl can cook, okay."
That's awesome. Okay. Number 8. What is a dream vacation destination?
Australia.
Okay. 9. What is something that you are afraid of?
Oh. Well, I mean, right now, it's this never ending, this COVID thing never ending, and
Okay.
the world not returning to normal.
Okay. Okay. And last question. What job other than your current one would you love to have?
I would go back to NASA in a heartbeat, maybe doing what I'm doing at VA at NASA, like more of the comm type of stuff versus the kind of project management type of stuff I was doing. I would do that.
Okay. Sounds great. Well, Monica, thank you so much for joining me on Doug's Front Porch. It's been a great conversation.
Thank you.
Um, a lot of laughs, and you made me think a little bit today, too. So it was great.
Perfect.
So thank you very much.
Thank you, Doug.
Thank you for listening to Doug's Front Porch, a conversational podcast with your host, Doug Maidenford. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd love for you to subscribe, rate, and give a review on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts from. Also, please feel free to tell all of your friends. I'll see you all next time on my front porch.